can't stop saying how amazing and unified the whole message has been throughout, and how all of these seeming dispergent people coming together and bringing together a single message in front of all of you. It's amazing. I mean, from every different walk of life, every different thought, and everybody coming to very similar conclusions. Well, what can I say about this one here? Mark Passio. Mark Passio is a dynamic, creative force in the universe. He is the epitome of fatherly love. And he had a simple question. What on earth is happening? He's an independent researcher, a public speaker, and a radio talk show host. You can catch him on whatonearthishappening.com. Mark is the co-host and visionary of the Free Your Mind conference, and has done an amazing job of being on spot this whole time and doing an amazing time getting this all coordinated. His studies have been in amounts of vast research going into metaphysics, occultism, spirituality, symbolism, and consciousness studies. He began this presentation with What on Earth is Happening, and just continued in from 2007 to today to continue to try and present a message to the world that would bring some common sense back to whatever is happening on planet Earth. Please welcome Mark Passio.
Okay, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for being here. My presentation today is going to kind of act as a grounding or an anchoring and help us to really see that there's another side to consciousness that we really cannot allow to be suppressed. And the title of the talk is called New Age Bullshit and the Suppression of the Sacred Masculine. Now, for anyone who has followed my work over the years, you know how much I have talked about the suppression of the sacred feminine, or the dynamic of care in our consciousness. This is going to be about the flip side of that, the mirror, the suppression of the sacred masculine. So let's jump right into the presentation. We all know that the solution is consciousness, and consciousness only manifests through balance. There needs to be balance within us if we are going to create balance without in the external world. So, the left and right brain hemispheres have to both be utilized and in conjunction with each other in a state of balance. The masculine aspect of the personality, the intellect, you could look at it as the upward pointing triangle. Okay, it's logical. It represents analytical thought, science, mathematics, linear thinking. The feminine side of consciousness is the intuition, creativity, nonlinear, dynamic processes, holistic thought, care and compassion and nurturing. Both of these are equally vital and need to be balanced. What the controllers of the world want to see us in is a mental schism. And a mental schism creates a spiritual schism. And it creates opposition internally, which then reflects as opposition in the external world. They don't want these two halves to come together in union, in sacred union. The intellect out of control, okay, the masculine aspect out of control can lead to rigid skepticism, scientism, or science as a religion, atheism, authoritarianism. Okay, if that part of the brain, the left brain hemisphere, is chronically dominant. Conversely, if the right side of the brain hemisphere is chronically dominant, this can lead to states of naivete and blind belief and religious extremism and what I call slave think, bowing down, never standing up for yourself, letting yourself be walked on. Okay? When we balance these two hemispheres and bring them together in that act of sacred union, that is when the spark of the divine activates within us, and we come online as a whole human being. Mind control works through the imbalance of the human psyche. Of course, I've talked ad nauseum about the complexes of the brain and how we have to bring these all together, utilize both the right and left brain hemisphere in union and in balance. And I talked about the neocortex being the higher order thinking. It's what makes higher order thinking possible in the human being. But the other two parts of the brain are equally as important, okay, in the three basic complexes that compose our brain. There's the mammal brain, which makes possible the emotions that we feel in the physiology of the body. And then there's the reptile brain, okay, which makes possible motor skills, respiration, and it activates our survival instincts. And this is important to keep active. You know, we can't just let that part of the brain drop away because we, don't want to be all just about survival in the physical world. Okay, all of these parts of the brain are equally important and need to be all active simultaneously. And when they are, then the neocortex acts in its proper role as the executive command center of the human brain, which makes higher thought functions possible, and then unifies us in with the heart. So we activate the mind and the heart together. When the left brain is chronically dominant, okay, so when we have masculine chronic dominance of the left brain hemisphere, this creates suppression of the emotional part of the brain. And it roots the personality in the R complex, or the reptilian brain. So that gives us the state of being a out-of-control male dominator aspect of the personality. And this isn't about gender, okay? This is about masculine and feminine qualities. We have to keep that in mind. So that kind of thinking could be present in a female as well as a male. If the right brain hemisphere is chronically dominant, this leads to slave think. It leads to the suppression of the survival instinct, and it eventually roots us in the mammalian brain, where we are ruled by the emotions instead of using them as a compass to guide our actions. Those two levels of brain imbalance, the imbalanced psyche, are a sorcerer's wet dream come true. This is what the state they want to keep us in at all times and places. In one side of imbalance or the other. That polarization, that schism, is what ultimately makes us give our power to them. It works through the process called dialectics. The word dialectics comes from the Greek language and Latin language. The prefix dia, or preposition dia, actually means through or by way of in Greek, by means of. And the Latin noun lectus means choice. So you put them together, dialectics means by way of choice, or through choice. Well, we see that active in our world at all times. This is how mind control works. It works through presenting us with a false choice, the illusion of free choice. Do you want the Democrats or the Republicans when it all leads to the same place? It leads to the slaughterhouse. So it's false choice. That's what dialectics are, false choices. I want to show you how the New Age movement is one of these false choices. It's just another religion, as we'll get to. Mind-controlled dialectics works through two main dynamics. The first is the dynamic called government. And these are both really illusions. They're control systems. Government actually works through the left brain, and it binds the right brain out of the way. It suppresses the right brain. It is based upon the erroneous and dogmatic belief that there is such a thing as authority that is vested in certain human beings, which gives them special rights which other human beings do not possess. Left brain imbalance will eventually create psychopathic tendencies in the individual, leading some to the belief that they have a right, quote unquote, to rule over others through violence. The next dynamic by which mind control works is religion. And I mean this in the term of a false religion, something that holds us back from progress. Religion works through the right brain hemisphere and it binds the left brain out of the way. It gets logic out of the way. I summarize religion like this, by this quote: if we give up our free will and personal responsibility to perform right action, some deity, government, guru, extraterrestrial race, or mystical force will save us from ourselves. See, religion works through right brain imbalance, which creates blind acceptance and collectivist groupthink if it is unchecked. And it will eventually lead to a condition in which willing followers will readily submit to authority. So you see how these two dynamics play off against each other to lead to total control. When you put them together, you end up with a brain in chains. And that's what this conference is all about doing. It's about breaking those chains of the mind. When each individual, in the aggregate, the individuals of our world have their brain bound, it leads to this state, a world in chains, which is where we find ourselves right now at this particular point in our evolutionary development in history. Again, the dynamic of government, the word itself, and I really want to clear this up once and for all, the word does mean to control the mind. There's so many people who debate this etymological definition, but I'll explain it very quickly again. Government comes from two Latin words, the verb gubernare, or sometimes rendered as governare. In classical Latin, there is no V. Gubernare means to control in Latin. Just look it up in any Latin dictionary. And the Latin noun mens means mind. You put them together, gubernare mens, government, to control the mind. People debate the last part of this term, mens, because of course in English, mens means the state of or the condition of. So I've always explained this to people as, of course we made this in English rooted, etymologically derived from the word mens in Latin. The state of anything ultimately has to happen first in the mind before it can manifest as a condition in the physical world. I mean, that makes perfect sense. And yet people argue this definition all the time. The word government does indeed mean mind control. Absolutely. And we need to understand it as such. It's based on an erroneous belief called authority. Authority is based in this concept called jurisdiction. Jurisdiction. That because you're born within some imaginary border that man created, that someone else rules over you and gets to tell you these things you can do, these things you can't do, even if some of those things are actually within your right to do. Okay? And it lets other people think that they have rights that they don't have, that they can do things that are actually against the laws of morality. Jurisdiction comes from the Latin noun jus juris, which means law, and the Latin verb dictere, dicto dictere, which means to speak or to say. Putting them together, we have to say the law. Jurisdiction means the law is what we say it is. That is what jurisdiction means. Okay? Authority is the illusion that is created by a diseased psyche that is out of balance toward the left brain. And the right brain as well, to accept the claim of authority. It is based entirely in violence. That is what backs authority. Violence. It is built upon the erroneous and dogmatic belief that some people are masters who have the moral right to issue commands, while others are slaves who have a moral obligation to obey the masters. This is slavery. By any definition, by any spin that you want to put on it, that's what it really is. Putting it plainly and simply. And this is what we seek to destroy, to get rid of. We have to get rid of this idea. This idea is a fundamentally flawed axiom. A fundamental concept that other ideas are built upon. And if you build something on an unsound structure that is based in junk, you cannot build anything on top of that resembles anything that is orderly or good for us. It will only result in more and more chaos and suffering. We are all sovereign beings. Whether anyone here recognizes it or not, So many people don't understand this word when you say, what is a sovereign? The word sovereign, let's break it down etymologically. Let's recognize the importance and the power in words themselves. We have to understand the words we're speaking. Sovereign comes from the Latin adverb super. Super means above. And it comes from, the second part of the word reign comes from the Latin noun regnum. Regnum in Latin means rulership or control. External rulership or control of another person. You put these together, okay? Above or beyond, which is what super means, and rulership or control, regnum. Above control, beyond control. One who is above the rulership or the control of another. One who is not a subject or a slave to any other. And this is what every single being on this planet is, whether they recognize it or not. We are sovereign beings. Sovereign means not a slave. I am not a slave. None of you are slaves. No one is a slave. There can only ever be the claim that someone is a master over another. And then there can be the acceptance of that claim, but neither one of those things will ever make it true in reality. This is a religion. Government and authority are religions. Religion comes from the Latin adverb relegare. Relegare means to tie back, to hold back, or to thwart from forward progress, to bind by tying. It is a system of control based in unchallenged and dogmatic belief which holds back the progress of human consciousness. That is what religion is in the negative sense. There is a positive connotation to the definition of relegare, which means to reunite. When we make truth our religion, then we are reunited with something that is worth being bound to. Okay? The New Age movement, however, is one of these false religions. Okay? I call it, many other researchers have called the New Age movement the last cul-de-sac before the gold mine. It's a cul-de-sac means a dead-end street with no outlet, which retards the flow of transportation. So you're going around in a circle if you're caught in a cul-de-sac. You never make any progress forward. I call the New Age movement the last religion before the gold mine. Because if what we're really seeking to do is create true enlightenment, we have to get out of all religions that are binding us and holding our consciousness back from truth. And the New Age movement is one of these religions. I call it a spiritual dead end with no outlet, which retards the true awakening process.